All right, welcome everyone to our August monthly webinar series. My name is Matt Firestone. I am president of Firestone Consulting Group. Would like to thank you for taking this time out of your Wednesday and joining us for our monthly webinar. As you can see, this month we are going to be talking about taking control of our time and how to build our most productive day. So we will jump right in and get started. Real quickly, a little bit about Firestone Consulting Group. We specialize in working with leaders and owners in the construction industry to help them build the businesses for the lifestyle that they desire. We work with them to leverage the people and develop a well-oiled machine to operate their business. The methods that we use are based on real-world experience of actually running and growing contracting businesses. With years of hands-on experience, our team of advisors and consultants will help you define your goals, develop a plan to achieve them, and help you to implement that plan. And most importantly, we'll be right there with you to celebrate your successes. This month, we have a little bit different sponsor for our webinar. Our webinar is sponsored by the Firestone Consulting High Performance Academy. This is a results-oriented program for high-performing managers within your organization that we work with them to use action and accountability to achieve results. This intensive six-month program puts learning into action, where at the end of each one of our sessions, participants leave with an action plan of how they're going to put what they learned into use with their company. For more information on our academy, you can visit our website at firestonecg.com/academy or email us for more information at academy@firestonecg.com. So as we talk about the topic for our webinar today, and we're looking at how we take control of our time and how we can ultimately build our most productive day, maybe some of you have asked yourself these questions or said to yourself, and there just isn't enough time in the day to get everything done. All I need is just one more hour. And I'll tell you what, if any of you have an idea of how you can get 25 hours in a day, I think that's the key to your retirement plan right there. So what we'll be talking about today is looking at the difference between being busy and productive, looking at how we can build that most productive day, and then most importantly, how we can take control of our time. So I'd like to get started off and do a poll real quick with those of you that are in attendance here. And you should see on your screen there, we have two questions to this first poll. The first question is, on a scale of 0 to 5, how busy is your typical day? And you can see with the scale there, 0, I can do this in my sleep, versus 5, I'm sinking faster than the Titanic. And then the second question there is, on a scale of 0 to 5 again, how productive would you rate your typical day? 0 being you don't get anything done on your today list, and 5 being I'm a rock star and crushed it today. So we'll wait just a few more moments here and let everybody that's in attendance respond and see where everybody is rating their day. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds here. Got about half of you have voted, so getting some good data here. All right, we'll close it in 5 seconds here. 4, 3, 2, 1. And I will go ahead and share those results. So by the looks of it, I would say that everybody's staying pretty busy. Some of you definitely more busy than others, but looking then at the second part of the survey or the poll there is looking at how productive we are. I think all of you are in the right place with most of you rating yourself as a 3. You could have done more, but still making progress. That's what we're talking about today, is looking at what our typical day is, knowing that we're not getting done maybe as much as we would like to, and hopefully at the end of our webinar today, you'll have some ideas of maybe how you can be more productive, how you can build that ideal day, and more importantly, even in looking at it from a productive week. So let's start off here with looking at, what does it really mean to be busy or productive? And, you can see from the poll results there that, most of you are staying busy, but even more importantly, most of you are saying that you are relatively productive with your typical day. And I know, when I've worked with other individuals, worked in teams, worked for different companies, a lot of times people misconstrue busy for being productive. And when we look at the root of it, busy is, just having a great deal to do. It's, having a lot of things on our desk, maybe multiple projects that we're working on. But when we start looking at being productive, we're looking at how we're actually achieving or producing a significant amount of result. So I guess at the root of it, what we could look at is if we look at busy, maybe it's focused more on the action of getting things done, and productive is focusing on the actual output and results. So when we look at, maybe describing these type of people, and think of some of the others that maybe you currently work with or people that you've worked with in the past, and maybe the busy people are those that are kind of frantic, running around the place that, as they say, they're keeping busy. Their priorities are the individual tasks that they have. They're very reactive and responds, immediately to that fire that's burning there on their desk. A lot of times these individuals feel overwhelmed or rushed, that they're always working right up to the deadline, and that there's never enough time to meet the requirements of that deadline. Their default response is yes, they continue to take on more work, again, maybe not more responsibility, but more work, and they tend to have that overflowing plate. Really have no plan, have multiple priorities. These are the type of people that are always multitasking. They have a phone in each hand, and they're trying to work through emails and also stay up to date on the latest sports scores, which isn't as big a thing right now, since we don't have a whole lot of live sports going on. These are the people that typically work harder and not smarter, and really want people to see them for the effort that they're putting forth. And as we can see across the page there is, not so much focused on the results. So when we look at the individuals, again, thinking to maybe it's yourself, others that you work with, or others that you've worked with in the past, and the people that are, the most productive are the ones that are achieving the goals that they've set for themselves, or maybe it's the goals that are set out for them with the organization. Their priorities are on the results that they are achieving. They're proactive in that they have schedules. They allot certain amounts of their time to the different tasks that they have to do. They're in control. They have that sense of being calm and relaxed. No is their default answer. And it's not that they're not a team player, but they also know that their time is limited, that they only have so much effort that they can put forth to achieving the results that they need to. So their default answer is no, as opposed to stacking more and more on their plate. They have clear goals and outcomes, intend to work both hard and smart, and really want others to see them for the results that they are achieving, not just the effort that they're putting forth. So the question I have is, can you be one without the other? Can you be focused more on the efforts or focused more on the results? Well, I would say that yes, you probably could, but when we think of the busy people, it's hard for them to be as focused on the results. So I would say those of us that think of ourselves as being more productive could definitely be busy and productive. And it's, just like we said on the last slide there, productive people are those that work hard and smart, where the busy people are the ones that typically are focused more on how hard they are working as opposed to focusing on the results. So when we look at, the big difference between being busy and productive is, we can look at a 2x2 grid like I have on the screen here, where we have one axis is, the value of the task, and the other axis there is the importance of that task. And what we want to think about is, where are we focusing our time, and where do we spend our time on a daily basis or a weekly basis? Thinking back to that first poll that we did there, those that that said you typically are busy, that you're typically productive, I would venture to guess that those of you that scored yourself high or ranked yourself high in both categories tend to work in that high value, high importance area. But it's important for us to look at all these different quadrants, because we're going to find that we spend time in each of those throughout our day, throughout our week. But we want to make sure that we are focusing the majority of our efforts and the majority of our resources on those high value and high important tasks that we're required to do. So, again, thinking back to how you responded to the poll, with being busy, being productive, in which quadrant do you spend most of your time, and where should you be spending your time? And as we go through the next few slides, we'll be talking, more in depth about each one of these different quadrants and what it really means to be working in those. So I want you to keep those questions in mind as we explore each of these different quadrants a little bit more. So the first quadrant here is what we like to describe as our time wasters. These are those low value, low importance tasks. Maybe it's browsing the internet, checking social media, taking a little bit longer at breaks or at lunchtime, partaking in office gossip. But these are the things that we need to get rid of and stop doing, that they're eating up our time. You can see on the screen there, this is something great that I don't know if everybody knows is out there with your iPhone and maybe even on the Droid, but it'll keep track of your screen time for you. I know there's apps that you can get for your PC that allow you to track that as well. So if you are maybe spending more time on the internet that you need to, maybe it's reading the news, and all of a sudden you click on another story and you click on a video that goes with that, and the next thing you know, you're down a rabbit hole and you've spent 30 minutes or an hour, which should have only been maybe a few minutes, getting caught up on the headlines. But thinking about your day, your normal day, maybe others in your office, what are some of those other things that are time wasters that you see in your business? And make sure that we're being aware of those. And again, these are the things that we want to stop doing and get rid of those from our daily routine. The second quadrant here is the low value and high importance. These are things that need to get done, but doesn't necessarily have to be that A+ level of work. That maybe that B or B+ work is done. So some examples might be a budget number that we're putting together on a project. It doesn't have to be as exact as maybe we would if we were actually bidding that project, but then thinking beyond maybe some of the tasks that we're doing, but others within our organization is maybe some of the materials that are concealed in a wall, in a ceiling, in a trench. Maybe you're going to have some type of another finish put over the top of them. The level of quality of that installation doesn't necessarily need to be the same as things that are on a finished surface or that are going to be exposed to everybody that's using that facility. And one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook with the low value, high importance area is when we start over planning and over analyzing things, that sometimes we just need to get to an answer, or we need to get to an action without looking at an exhaustive list of all the possibilities. But it's looking at what that value is compared to just getting the task done so we can move on to more important things. So again, these are the things that need to be done, but there's definitely bigger or more valuable things that we need to be worrying about in our own role or in the success of our company. So again, think, what are some of those other tasks that maybe don't have to be perfect? And as we go through these slides, feel free to use the chat if there are any, things that come to mind that would fall in some of these different categories that isn't on our list. The next category here would be the things that we would look at that we could potentially delegate. And these are the high value but low importance. And when we look at that scale there, that maybe we look at the importance scale as being, maybe higher importance of us actually doing that task, or somebody else doing that, where the high value is something that's important to our role, or strategically there's value in why we have to do that. But these are things, maybe it's generating some type of a report. Maybe it's as simple as signing the checks that go out of the company. Maybe it's some data entry tasks. Maybe it's some of the meetings that we attend, that maybe there's somebody else in our organization that could attend those meetings for us, and then just give us a recap of that. And again, I know looking at the list of attendees here, we have people from a lot of different sizes of organizations, and maybe there isn't always that person that we can delegate those tasks to. But getting in that mindset of, as we grow and have other people that we could delegate tasks to, that's important to be aware of. But the other thing is maybe this is your to-do list for Friday afternoons, after you get all the high value tasks done that have to get done during the week, that maybe Friday afternoons you kind of have, well, here's these other things that we do need to do, but they aren't as important as some of the other tasks that you're currently working on. So maybe, if you don't have somebody to delegate to, that this could be your Friday afternoon to-do list. And then the last quadrant, and this would be that upper right-hand corner, these are those high value, high importance tasks. And you can see here, one of our Nebraska celebrities, we have Larry the Cable Guy there, whose motto is "Get her done." And these are the things that need to be done by you, and these should be your primary focus of the tasks that you're working on a daily and weekly basis. So these are, if we want to look at how we classify or identify these tasks, these are the tasks that move both you and your company forward. So again, it might be different for smaller organizations or larger organizations, or depending on what your role is within that organization, of what you can delegate, what you have to do. But everything should be not only helping you achieve your personal goals, but most importantly, what are the goals and what are those strategic initiatives that your company is trying to achieve, and how are the things that you're doing on a daily basis helping to move towards those goals. So again, when we look at how we spend, most of our day, is it getting our own work done, those high value, high important tasks, or is it helping others get their work done? And maybe we view that as putting out fires, and those could be other people's fires. They might just be things that creep up on us that we really have no control over when they come. And then also, dealing with interruptions, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those interruptions might look like. But when we look at how we spend our time during the day, we need to stop and ask ourselves, well, who should be doing this task? Is this something that I have to do, or is it something somebody else in the organization could be doing for me? Does it need to be done now, or is this something that should go to that list for our Friday afternoons of things that we need to do? And then again, how well should that be done? Are we okay with just B+ work, or does this have to be something where it's, that A+ level work that we're doing? Things like getting a bid out. We want to have that as accurate as we can. We want to know what our true costs are. We want to make sure that we're being as competitive as we can. I would say that that's one of those things that we really don't want to settle for that B+ work, that we want to strive for that A+ work. Or maybe it's a proposal that we put out, that we want to make sure that we clearly scope out everything that we have in that project, and what our number represents. Or maybe it's how we show up to a job site meeting, and are we prepared for that? And again, making sure that we are putting our best foot forward and representing our company in the right light. So as we continue through the webinar here, I do have another poll that I'd like to launch here and have you participate in this. And this is when we're going to start looking at our individual days of what does our typical day look like, and how do we start building that most productive day? So as you can see with the poll that I put up on the screen there, first question there is just looking at, how many hours do you work in the typical day? The second question there is looking at your work-life balance and how satisfied are you with that? And if you could have, your ideal work week, what would that look like with the number of hours that you're currently working in a normal week? Again, we know that some days we might have more, some we might have less. Same thing with the week. But just kind of seeing what those ideals would look like there. So again, just over 50% of you have voted. We'll give it a few more seconds here to let everybody get their responses in there. Give about 5 more seconds here. 3, 2, 1. And I will go ahead and show these results and add a little bit more spread in our results here that have people that are working as few as 7 hours or less, all the way up to 14 or more hours in a typical day. But we can see there that the bulk of the participants here working somewhere between 8 and 11 hours in a typical day. Definitely looking at the next question there, that work-life balance. I'd say some are a little bit more satisfied than others, but somewhere kind of right there in the middle. You can see just above average there with the majority of the people responding 3. And then if we look at how many hours would you like to work in your ideal work week, again, we don't know who responded to how many hours in the typical day, but I'm assuming that the individual that wants to work less than 60 hours is probably one of the individuals that did 14 or more in a day, somewhere there. But we can see that, ideally we would all like to be working, right around that 40 hours, that standard work week. But we can see that for many of us, we have a fair amount of work to do, and for some a little bit more than others to actually get to that 40-hour work week. But hopefully we'll see in the remaining part of the webinar maybe some ideas or some places where we could at least get some of that time back and get a little bit closer to that ideal work day. So again, when we go back to what we talked about before, where the difference between being busy and productive, and looking at our own individual work days, some of the things that maybe you think of when you look at maybe one of your most non-productive days, and maybe it's the number of interruptions you have, and it could be phone calls or emails or people just coming into your office and asking questions. Meetings with no purpose, or meetings about having meetings, kind of that running from here to there. It's like the dog chasing its tail, where we know we have to get to all these different places, but we're spending a lot of our time with windshield time or something like that we aren't actually being productive and getting things done. We don't have a schedule or a plan for the day, kind of feel unorganized. Maybe we have stacks upon stacks of papers on our desk. Our inbox is the biggest stack that we have to get through. Just random time wasters. Again, maybe that's some of that office gossip or browsing the internet, whatever those time wasters are. One of the ones that I think a lot of people forget about for being non-productive is procrastination, where we know we have tasks that we need to get done, but we continue to put them off until a later time. And then all of a sudden the deadline approaches, and we have to allocate additional resources to get those things done. And maybe it affects the quality of the output of that. Or maybe that's one of the main factors in why we're working additional hours or working more hours in the week. And like we said, maybe it's just being busy, that we're more focused on the actions of doing things versus the results and getting things off of our list. Now, on the flip side of that, as we look at, what would a productive day look like, this would be having that game plan, or maybe for some of you, it's a to-do list that maybe we prepared it the afternoon before, or we prepare it on the weekend and kind of plan our week out, that we look at that list and we have a game plan of what we're going to do when we show up for work in the morning, or maybe we've even started getting in that mindset before we leave our house, or for some of you, it's before you leave the bedroom and head to the kitchen table if you are still working remotely. But it's having, what are those daily goals, or maybe they're milestones that we're working towards to achieve bigger successes. It's being prepared and having, scheduled breaks as opposed to having breaks in our workflow because of interruptions. So we all know that we can only work so long before we have to take a step back and maybe have that mental break. And maybe it's having a set time for lunch, or a set time to just get up and walk around and clear our head a little bit, as opposed to just randomly throughout the day. Fewer distractions and fewer interruptions. Maybe it's, times where we have to close our door and actually get things done. Or maybe it's starting our day a little bit earlier than some of the people that work for us or that we work with, so we can get some of our work done before we know we're going to have to help others get their work done. A lot of it's around setting priorities and what are those high value tasks that we need to be working on versus some of the things that maybe we can push off to Friday afternoon that we know we need to get done. We'll get them done, but they don't take precedence over some of the other items that we're working on. Again, back to maybe some of those things that are the non-productive or meetings just for the sake of meetings, but meetings can also be very productive in making sure that we have an agenda and we have clear objectives to why we're having that meeting, a definite start time and end time, that it's not, well, we have a meeting at 9 o'clock and it's just going to go however long it takes. Let's have a clear agenda, and we know that it's going to be done at 10 o'clock or it's going to be done at 9:45, and leave some time for questions from the participants in that meeting, but that we have a clear reason or purpose for why we're having that meeting, and that we're focused on those high value tasks. And I guess I kind of combined those last two bullet points in one there, but that we are focused, that we have drive, we have direction of where we're trying to take that day. So for this next part here, if you do have a piece of paper handy, going to be a little bit more interactive here with this one. If you don't have a piece of paper handy, that's just fine as well. But what we're going to do here is I just want you to kind of think and envision what that most productive day would look like. Again, it's taking out any noise or any interference from outside people or forces. And if you could just have a magic wand or a crystal ball where you could just say, this is what my ideal most productive day would look like, I want you to think through some of these questions that I'm going to ask. And if you do have that paper and pencil handy or a pen, go ahead and jot these down. Otherwise, just kind of think, and maybe you can jot them down later when you have a paper and pencil in front of you. But as we think about building our most productive day, it's thinking about, where are you? Is it that you're in that same place throughout the day, or are you doing part of your work in one location and maybe part of that work in another location? But is it getting started at home, or does your day start when you get to the office? So thinking about where you are as you're envisioning this most productive day. The second question I want you to think about is, who is with you in this most productive day? Are you more productive when you're working by yourself, or are you more productive when you're working alongside others and working as part of a team? Or are there certain parts of the day or certain tasks that you want to work by yourself and want to work with others? The next question is who are you communicating with? What methods of communication are you using? Is it something where you have to have those face-to-face conversations, or is it something that you could, pick up the phone and get the same message across? Or is it something that you could send in an email, or vice versa? Is it something that you were going to send that email, but it's important enough or that that meeting would be better served face-to-face as opposed to just sending that email or a text message? So thinking about who are you communicating with, maybe what's being said, what's the message that you're trying to convey. Then I want you to think about, what did you accomplish for that day? Did you have a to-do list? Did you get things checked off of that list? Were you moving the needle forward, both for yourself and for your organization? Do you feel that you're prepared for tomorrow? What about for the day after that, or maybe even into next week? And then I want you to think about, how do you feel in this most productive day? Do you feel stressed or tense? Or is it more of a relaxed and calm feeling as you work through that day? Again, there might be some points where it's more stressful and other points where you're more relaxed and calm. But again, we're looking at what does that ideal day look like? So hopefully you've kind of worked through that. You have an idea of that. It'd be great if we could have some back and forth conversation here, but it's a little hard to do with the webinars. But again, we're trying to pull out all the stops and come up with what that most productive day looks like. The next part of that is, and we talked a little bit about this when what did we accomplish, but it's, how are you going to measure that productive day? We talked about maybe where it is, where we're working, how we feel, but how are you going to know and measure that you had a productive day or not? Maybe it's, how many items you had completed from your to-do list. Did you get your inbox cleared, whether that's the inbox on your desk or your email inbox? How many phone calls did you have returned? Maybe it's from an estimator standpoint. How many sheets of takeoff did you get completed in that day? Maybe from the field side of things, it's how much material did you get installed? Were there certain milestones that were reached towards those goals that you're working towards? Or did you, achieve one of those goals or complete one of the bigger goals that you had for yourself or for your organization? So just some real quick facts here that I thought I would throw out there. We talked a little bit about, having those scheduled breaks, and this comes from, it's an organization that's the Resume Professional Writers group that did a study and put some of these facts together. But, having that work to break ratio, and it's kind of a 3-to-1 ratio, where what they found is most people can work and be very focused for about 52 minutes, but then need to take a 17-minute break, which I know all the managers on the call right now are maybe cringing at that, because it's a little bit less effective than what we would like to see from our workforce. But I think the biggest part with that is just being aware that we can't have our nose to the grindstone for 8 solid hours in a day, every day. Just like with overtime, we can do it in short spurts and still be effective with that. The same thing goes with being productive and getting tasks completed. We can do it in short spurts for long periods of time, but that isn't something that's sustainable over a longer period of time. One of the things that they found in their study is, 61% of the employees that were surveyed said loud coworkers are the #1 distraction at work. So we talked about maybe some of those interruptions of phone calls, emails, in person, somebody coming into our office. But even if they aren't in our office and they aren't interacting with us one-on-one, just because of the sheer volume that they have, maybe it's the music they're listening to, or maybe they talk extra loud on the phone, that it's creating those distractions and making it more difficult for us to focus with the work that we're trying to do. They found that multitasking can have as much as a 40% decrease in productivity, which I know there's probably a few of you on this call that say, man, I'm a master of multitasking. I can do a lot of things at once. Well, what we find is, quality starts being affected, that it actually takes us a little bit longer. We're doing a little bit on each of these things all at once, but we're really not making great strides and great progress in actually getting things done. On the flip side of that, what they found is happiness can actually have a 12% increase in productivity. So some of you that participated in our webinar, I guess it was the end of June, when we talked about employee engagement, we can see just how important that is to make sure that our employees are engaged, that they like coming to work, that it actually has an increase on their productivity. And then the other part that I thought was rather interesting, as we look to build and create our most productive day, is being aware of when we are the most productive. And it's, what they found is it's in the late morning around 11 a.m., but then peaks between 2 and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And thinking back to, when I was working as a contractor, trying to read a spec book right after lunch or something like that wasn't ideal. That you go and get lunch, you feel a little bit more energized, maybe you can go and do things, or that you have to be up moving around. But it's finding, okay, maybe before lunch, that would be a great time, that 11 a.m. I can really focus on getting that spec book read. But then making sure that, as we can see with the study here, is that we kind of have that plan in place to where we're accelerating through the afternoon and ending the day on a high note when we are at our most productive levels. And one thing, and this is again looking back to that second poll that we did of how many hours are you working in a typical day, and looking at maybe what it would look like in your ideal work week or ideal day, is creating that balance between how many hours you are working and how many that you would like to be working. And really thinking and focusing on how you can make that happen. And I know it may seem like a long shot right now, but that would be something that as we build out this most productive day, how can we start getting rid of some of those time wasters, and maybe that's how we can free up some of our time and work less hours in a day, ultimately working less hours in the week. One of the the big things about creating this balance and why it's important is, and you can see with the image there on the screen, the oxygen mask from an airplane. And for those of you that do travel and have flown, when they do the safety briefing, that the thing they tell you with the oxygen masks is should they drop, that you need to put your oxygen mask on first before you help somebody else. And this is really what we're looking at, of making sure that we're taking care of ourselves first, because once we take care of ourselves, that then we can help everybody else that are around us. That we have a lot of people that do depend on us. It's our families, our coworkers, our employees, our company are all depending on us to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, to make sure that we're able to be as productive as we can, and that we can provide the value that we need to for the organization. And again, looking back to the webinar we did on employee engagement, we know from that webinar that when we don't take care of ourselves, we don't create this balance, and we're working too many hours each day, too many hours each week. It can lead to our own burnout, but as managers, we're looking at, how does this affect our employees? Well, burnout, absenteeism, illness, stress, turnover, and just overall lower productivity. And I'm sure we could, create a list of, 10 or 20 more things that we could see on here if we don't see a good balance between work and our personal lives. So what we've talked about, with being productive and building this ideal day, really the most limiting resource that we have of all is time. And what we know about time is we can't build more of it, we can't grow more of it, we can't, in the literal sense, buy more of it. There's only so much time. Now we could delegate and hire other people, I guess, if you want to say that's buying more time. But even Jeff Bezos, with all the money he has, he can't get more hours in the day than anybody else. And what we want to remember is when we spend time, it's gone forever. We can't get that time back. So when we look at how we're going to take control of our time, and what is it that we mean when we say take control of our time? Is it, for some of you that maybe haven't embraced the digital age, maybe it's not winding that clock, or that we didn't charge our phone. Well, we know that that's not the case, that even if the clock doesn't tell the time, it's still being used. So what we look at is really what is in our control. And we can't control the time that We know there's 60 minutes in every hour, 24 hours in every day, and 168 hours in every week. But what we can control is how we use our time, and more importantly, how we let others use that time as well. So as we look at, how we're going to use our time is, what will make us more productive, and how can we provide the most value both to ourselves, to our family, to our organization, and looking at, what are some of the tools that we could use, and maybe who are people that we could ask for help with this. And I guess the question that I would leave you with is what is stopping you from starting today to being more productive and taking more control of how you use your time and how others use your time? So one of the tools I would like to share with you, with how maybe we can look at how our time's being spent and then make adjustments from that, because without any information we can make all these changes, but we might be changing things that we don't need to and missing some of those areas that we should be focusing on. So one of the simple tools that I like to use with some of the clients that I work with to help them create this most productive day is we'll do what I call as a time study. And what we do with that is log your time for at least 2 weeks, because that gives you, a couple of Mondays, a couple of Fridays, maybe you have a real busy day and maybe a lighter day, that we can get a little bit better picture of what those averages look like. But what we want to look at is in the 15 or 30-minute intervals of what you're doing. I'd say a printed calendar or daily schedule works best. Not so much from the tracking and collecting the data, but it's the next step that if we use some type of a electronic calendar like Google or Outlook, we can't really get the same value from that as we can from a handwritten one. One of the most important things is we want to log everything. And again, the goal with this is to collect the data and be able to make informed decisions. So even if we are doing some of those time wasters, we want to put it on to our log sheet so we can see those things. Again, as leaders, regardless the size of our organization, sometimes we have to look in the mirror and see some of those things that we don't want to see. So make sure that we are logging everything. And the other thing is make sure that you're filling out this daily schedule or this log as you go, that you don't want to wait till the end of the day and make real broad categories and do a half hour or hour at a time. What we really want to see is down to that 15 or 30-minute interval. And the other part of it is making notes as you go to see, maybe different energy levels or attitudes that you have throughout the day, and, determine when are those times that you have the most energy and maybe the highest level of focus. The second part of it is after you've done this time study for a couple of weeks, is to take all those log sheets. And what I suggest is using 4 different colors of highlighters. But what we're going to do is go through and mark all the time wasters, mark all the things that you could potentially delegate or put onto that Friday afternoon list, things that need to get done, but maybe not to that A+ level like we talked before. And then also identify those things that have to get done. They're of high value, high importance. So we're looking at those 4 different quadrants that we talked about before, but we're going to go through and look at all those different things on our time log. And then what we want to do is answer a few questions. We want to look at, what insights did you have by looking at your time study? Did you see any patterns? Were there certain days that maybe you were less productive than others, that maybe you had more, what you describe as time wasters on certain days, or maybe it was certain times a day. But we're looking at, what times a day or what days of the week were you busy but maybe not productive, or that you were busy putting out other people's fires and not able to get your own work done. And then again, looking at what days or what times a day that you felt you were most productive. And then ultimately what we're looking at is what can we do differently to create that most productive day? Well, this is where then we can use things like Outlook or our Google Calendar, and we could create, break your day into blocks, and maybe you color code those blocks to say, okay, I'm going to be focused on, try to get all my meetings done in the morning. I'm going to do all my invoicing before lunch, and just break your day up into some of these high category tasks that you work with. But of course, we don't want to overschedule ourselves. We want to allow for some flexibility in there. And one of the most important things is that we don't want to overcomplicate our system. When I first implemented this method for how I do my calendar, I use like 8 or 9 different colors for this was business development, this was working on the business, this was personal, this was family. I had all these different colors, and it was too hard to keep track, and I had to remember what colors those were, where I've broken it down into where I use 4 colors on my calendar. And this isn't actually my calendar that you see on the screen, but what I've done is I have blocks of work time versus time for this webinar on my calendar. And what I've done is I've put them in there as a block. I mark it as free so it shows up on my calendar, but it still allows me to schedule other things on in that same time slot. But what I can quickly do is I can look at a week or I can look at a month on my calendar and see, am I getting that balance between work and home? Am I getting the balance between working on my business versus working in the business and getting projects completed? Again, I start out with my blocks, but throughout the week they change, where maybe I had an orange block in the morning, gets moved to the afternoon. But again, I'm looking at that overall picture and creating that balance. So again, that was looking at how we're working with our time. But then the other part is how do we let others use our time? Quote by the famous Chicago Bears coach, Mike Ditka: "In life, we get what we tolerate." And what I mean by that is what we're tolerating with our coworkers, with our employees, whoever that might be. If we do tolerate those interruptions, or that we, are focused on other people's priorities, we're focused on those low value tasks, or that we just allow our time to be less important than somebody else's, as long as we continue to tolerate that, that's going to be the norm that we're used to. So, one of the ways that we can kind of work through this is by setting boundaries of how we allow others to use our time. So maybe this is, looking at how we spend, time with others, and it's clearly identifying, what are those high value tasks. Maybe it's talking with your manager to help you prioritize where you should be focusing some of your efforts, and maybe it's identifying what's important to them and what's important to the company, or if you are the manager or the boss, how you can help your employees do that as well to be as productive as they can. Maybe it's looking at when you're available to others, and even though you have an open door policy, is there still the ability to have restricted times in your schedule? Maybe from 12:30 to 1:30, or from 1 to 2 in the afternoon, you're going to close your door, and everybody knows that you're not supposed to be interrupted unless it's an emergency, because you're going to return phone calls, you're going to go through your inbox. So I think that's one of those things that people forget is, we leave Outlook open, or we leave, Gmail open, and every time an email pops up, we think we have to respond. But I know from experience, sometimes you'll get 5 or 6 emails from the same person, and that 5th or 6th email is, oh, hey, I got this problem solved myself. Where, if we look at different times throughout the day that we respond to those, what I found is if it's really an emergency and somebody sends you an email and you don't respond, they're going to pick up the phone and call you and get your input on that anyways. Looking at what you can delegate, we know that it needs to get done, but we don't want to compromise the quality. So we create this kind of a win-win scenario. We're getting it off our plate and get it onto somebody else's plate, but maybe throughout that process is we're actually helping to develop that individual to be able to take on more responsibility. So not only does it help us get it off our plate, but it can help develop and advance that other individual within our organization. And then the last one there is looking at how we could negotiate for time. And, maybe this is as simple as saying, hey, I'll give you, 15 minutes after lunch. But when that individual comes, to you with their problem, I'll give you my 15 minutes after lunch to help you solve this problem, but I want you to come to me with 3 possible solutions, and we'll work through those solutions together. And that way, maybe they've found the solution themselves. But if not, you have that ability to coach and mentor them to finding the right solution. Have another interactive part here that I would like you to do. This is what I call the power of 12. So again, if you have a piece of paper in front of you, makes it a little bit easier. But what I would like you to do is think about splitting your day in half. And maybe that's looking at your morning before lunch and your afternoon after lunch. But what I want you to think about is in that first half of your day, where is maybe 6 minutes that you're wasting, or 6 minutes that you could do less of something and put that back into your pool of time that you have available to yourself. And then the second thing I want you to do is do the exact same thing, but with your second half of your day. So can you find 6 minutes in the morning and 6 minutes in the afternoon? So if you do have a calculator handy, or if you're good with your mental math, real quickly, 6 plus 6 is 12. So all we're looking for is, how do we come up with 12 minutes each day? 6 in the morning and 6 in the afternoon. If we take that 12 minutes times the 5 days in our typical work week, we know that that's 60 minutes. And that 60 minutes equals an hour. So again, we don't have to make great monumental tasks in how we redo our schedule, but if we can find 6 minutes in the morning, 6 minutes in the afternoon, each and every day, we've just gained ourselves an extra hour each week that we could be focusing on some of those higher value tasks. For those of you that like to read, a few books that I've read and really enjoy some of the ideas. Again, maybe not everything in each one of these books is something we can implement in our businesses. But the first one there, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. His focus is on getting your big, tasks on your calendar first, and then the smaller and smaller, and uses the analogy of rocks in a jar. We have to put our big rocks in there first, then we can put the smaller ones, finally the sand. Whereas if we start with the small tasks first, we'll get our jar filled up before we can have space for the bigger rocks that we have to accomplish. Second one there is Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. And the principle behind this book is tackling your biggest challenge first thing in the morning, or first thing that day, to avoid procrastinating throughout the day. Or maybe it's starting with it, first thing in the week, as opposed to pushing it off till later in the week. David Allen's Getting Things Done has a whole methodology he calls GTD, and it's a system for completing our to-do list and defining, what done means, or what that outcome is, and looking at what is the action needed to get that done. The 4-hour work week, this is a little far-fetched for some people, but what I found, and I've read this one a few times, is Tim Ferriss has some great ideas, and like I said, they're pretty far-fetched, and especially in a service industry like construction. But there are little bits and pieces of, what he was able to delegate and how he was able to control his access to his time with people that he had working for him. So even if you can take a few, nuggets of information from there, it's pretty good. And then the last one there is James Clear's Atomic Habits. And it's, really looking at how are those, small changes we can make really have huge results for us. And it's, how we create these habits that then we can really focus on what matters most. And then I would like to leave you with one quote here. And again, this goes back to my power of 12 analogy that we did there. If you want to be more productive, you need to become a master of your minutes. And this is a quote by Crystal Payne, who does has written some books and has a blog and I believe a podcast on personal finance and some things like that. But we can see just how powerful, 12 minutes a day becomes. And even, we don't have to look at a 12-minute chunk. We can do 6 in the morning and 6 in the afternoon and still get to that extra hour each week. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any questions that any of you have. Feel free to use the question and answer feature in Zoom, or if you'd like to put them in the chat. I'd like to say thank you there to Ryan. He put a great link there from Dave Crenshaw on the myth of multitasking. So those of you that have your chat window open, go ahead and click on that link there, and you can see that website there that Ryan shared with us. So not seeing any questions there, but if any of you have any comments, questions, love to see those in the chat or in the question and answer window. For those of you that would like to get a hold of myself or somebody on my team here at Firestone Consulting, you can find us on the web at firestonecg.com or reach us at 402-817-1420. Would also like to remind you of our High Performance Academy. We do have our next academy starting October 6th. Our enrollment closes the end of September. So if that is something that you are interested in, please reach out. We would love to chat with you a little bit more about that. Yes, Eric, we are recording the webinar. This webinar and all of our previous webinars are available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com and search for Firestone CG, you can get to our YouTube channel that way and view all of our previous webinars. It takes us about a day to get the current webinar up there, but that will be up there by the end of the week for sure. So I'll hold tight here for, got a few more minutes till we get to our full 60 minutes. So if any of you have any other questions, would love to answer those. I will go back to the list of books here for any of you that would like to jot those down. Again, I think there's things that we can take from each one of those. If you look at the set of books together, a lot of great and valuable information collectively. So I guess I will leave the floor open here for just another moment and see if anybody has any questions. But if not, I would like to again say thank you for taking your time out of this Wednesday and joining us for our webinar. Please watch your inbox for our upcoming webinars. We do a webinar the last Wednesday of every month. So watch your email for that registration link for next month's webinar. With that, don't see any additional questions. Again, thank you, and look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Have a great day.